Welcome to everyone who's joining us for today's DMCNY Midweek Recharge. I'm Ginger Conlon, President of DMCNY, and we're going to discuss the magic formula for customer lifetime value. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank DMCNY's annual sponsors whose generous support makes events such as this possible. So thank you to our platinum sponsor, Axiom, our gold sponsors Wyland, Experian, and Alliant, and our bronze sponsors BMI Global OMS, Japs Olson Company, and Epsilon. Also a bit of housekeeping. Yay! A bit of housekeeping. If you have any technical issues, just go ahead and use the chat. We'll get to them, as quickly as possible. If you have any questions for our speakers today, please use the Q&A. I'll keep an eye on both just in case, but Q&A is the best place, and we can take questions during the conversation as well as at the end at a dedicated Q&A point. So with that, I would like to welcome our two speakers. I'm very excited. Joining us today to talk customer lifetime value are Chris Zane, who is the founder and president of Zane Cycles, and who I have known for probably a good 15, 20 years. We met when I was at One to One magazine, and he was one of our customer champions. So if someone, anyone knows about customer lifetime value, Chris is your guy. and our other CLTV expert is longtime DMCNY member, Ruth Stevens, who's president of eMarketing strategy. Especially on the B2B side, Ruth really knows her stuff. So two amazing speakers today. I'm so excited. So we're going to talk about assessing customer lifetime value in these crazy times. Chris is going to talk about his magic formula he uses at Zane Cycles for successfully guiding business growth through customer lifetime value and lots more. So let's jump in. Welcome, Chris and Ruth.
Thank you.
So we're going to try and keep this as conversational as possible. So like I said, folks, if you've got any questions, go ahead and toss them in there. I'll keep an eye out. But let's kick off with, so much is changing right now. Is customer lifetime value still a relevant metric? Is it any harder or easier than ever, than before? Chris, you chuckled, so I'm gonna throw it to you first.
Well, it's the foundation of our organization, and we've grown, substantially from the time we started back in the early '80s until this year. I mean, we're still growing at an exponential rate because we recognize the lifetime value of our customers, and we focus on the lifetime value of our customers in any interaction that we have with them. And ultimately, that just equates to extreme customer service and a customer experience that's, really over the top, because we're not looking at a customer like they're an $8 tube transaction or a $1.79 power bar transaction. They have the number, and the number to us, we've calculated what a customer's worth from cradle to grave, and my staff understands that and really has been able to embrace it. So it's a frontline passion that carries forward, and it gives us the ability to have our customers recognize that we value them not just for a single transaction, but for a lifetime of interactions.
Great. Ruth, what are you seeing?
Well, I'm just fascinated that you think that the pandemic and all the attendant, disruptions to business would have an impact on this concept, which is fundamental to everything we do in the world of direct marketing. In fact, I was remembering just today I was on a call with John Hall, who was my boss at Book of the Month Club in a Time Warner division, now pretty much defunct. And I learned the principles of direct and database marketing primarily from him and my other colleagues at Book of the Month Club, and I also worked at Time Life Books. And the concept is still totally valid as a business tool. It's valid for determining how much you can invest in acquiring a customer and still maintain an ROI, positive ROI. And it also helps you differentiate among customers. And Chris, I'm sure you do this instinctively, that some customers are going to be more valuable than others. So if we can predict, based on whatever data we have early on, what the likely value of any individual customer or segment of customers is going to be, then we can determine how much to invest in deepening that relationship. But, you know, based on your question about these times, what's been the fundamental challenge for marketers is access to accurate and complete data. Because without that, we're basically flying blind, or we're making estimates. So what I'm dying to hear is whether Chris is actually attributing a sale and maybe the margin on the sale to an individual customer, or is it more conceptual that all of the customers tend to result in this kind of lifetime value, and therefore let's get all of our employees to treat them like, you know, they have a stamp of $700 or $5,000 or whatever on their foreheads. So I'm dying to hear, Chris, what you say about that.
So there's multiple thoughts and multiple practices for how you can engage your customers and have your marketing team and your organization, you know, respect the lifetime value of a customer. I have Gary Loveman from Caesars, a good friend of mine, and they set up Total Rewards, and Total Rewards has tiered customer relationships because they know that a gold is worth really very little, and a diamond or a 7-star customer is worth a tremendous amount. And that you carry a card, and when you put it in front of the dealer, or you show it to the host, immediately the mark on the forehead goes from a small number to a huge number, and the engagement is at a different level. We're in retail, and we also do some corporate business, but our corporate customers are consistent in that they all have about the same opportunity to do business with us as at that level as a retail customer does at the retail level. So in our organization, we don't tier our customers. They all have a stamp on their forehead, and the stamp is $12,500. If you look at the lifetime value of a customer for us, from the 12-inch bike with training wheels up to the 20-inch bike when they're 10, and then a high school bike or early college bike, and then the marriage, my wife and I are going to go ride, so we're going to buy bikes, and then the midlife crisis bike, and then the retirement bike, and you add all those transactions up, they add up to $12,500. In our organization, we run at about a 40% gross margin. So that's $5,250 in profit is what every customer walks through the door potentially can spend in our organization. And we're actually so transparent. I wrote a book about this lifetime value, and it's in there so that even our customers know when they walk through the door, they've got a stamp on their head that's worth $12,500 in sales, if we earn the right to continue to service them. And that's really the thing that a lot of organizations need to focus on is, yes, doesn't matter what business you're in. If you look at your cradle-to-grave relationship with the customer, whether it's corporate or it's B2B or B2C, there's a number. But do you earn the right to continue to have them be your customer, or do they peel off and go somewhere else because you missed, or you're not focused on what their needs are, or you're not engaged in them at the same level that they need to be engaged in as their value increases? And we certainly have super users. We have customers that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in our store. They have e-bikes. They're hardcore enthusiasts. They buy a new bike every year because they just love the tech and they want. But that guy honestly doesn't get treated any differently than the 5-year-old who comes in for his first bike, because the 5-year-old who comes in for his first bike has tremendous opportunity to grow up to be that other guy. So we're not gonna put them in pockets of value. And again, that allows the sales associate or the frontline individual to be loyal to all of the people that come through the door. And we talk about that in our customer service training is we either are or we aren't. You decide whether you are or you aren't. We're either going to be really good at what we do or we aren't. And if we're going to be really good at what we do, then we have to be really good at what we do for everybody, because then we've all of a sudden, when you check the box and say, well, this person doesn't deserve the value that we can provide, then you aren't anymore. And we really want to be the people that are and not the people that aren't. So that's the focus on how we recognize lifetime value and how we get our frontline people to literally embrace our relationship with our customers, because there isn't a line in the sand that determines that they're not valuable anymore.
Excellent. So, clearly customer lifetime value is important. It's just as important as ever. Are enough marketers using it correctly at all, Ruth? Correctly / at all?
Well, with digital marketing, the concept is starting to really penetrate the minds of what used to be general advertisers, or not direct marketers who are trained in this stuff on their first day at work. So, but digital being so measurable at the front end, it really begs the comparison with what we would call the back end, meaning once we've gotten them to respond to us, what are we able to sell them, and what is the return on that initial marketing investment. So I would say that your typical digital marketer is starting to think this way. Retailers, though, like Chris, I would say Chris is a huge standout, because the typical mindset of a retailer, frankly, now this is Ruth's opinion, and the little work I've done in my consulting with retailers is they tend to be more product focused than customer focused when they're thinking about strategies, and not to say that they're not thinking about customers. Of course they are. They're trying to get store traffic and so forth. But the big issue for retailers has been traditionally that the transaction was anonymous. So they couldn't collect on an individual basis the information they needed to be able to differentiate one customer from another. And now Chris has hit on a brilliant workaround for that. He says, we're just going to treat everybody great. And that makes a lot of sense as well. And the kind of discounted cash flow calculation that a retailer who has access to individual purchase data, it is another direction that they could go. What retailers have done since time immemorial is try to de-anonymize the transaction, meaning figure out a way to connect the cash register with the individual. And one of the early methods of that was to ask for a phone number.
Radio Shack.
Do you do that, Chris?
Well, no, we connect with our customers because, again, we don't require receipts. People don't have, we have so many reasons why the customer wants to engage with us that it's not offensive. It's not like going into Radio Shack and trying to buy batteries and they won't sell them to you unless you give them your phone number. That's a Seinfeld.
It was a disaster.
But I know. It was a disaster, right? Because what are you doing with that data? And they didn't do anything with it. They just had a box they had to check, and they didn't understand why they did it.
Yeah, exactly. And Radio Shack is sort of the most egregious example. But credit card matchback was also a technique widely used among retailers until the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act killed that. Because we operated in the constraints placed on us by society, and society reared up and said, we don't want you to match our credit card transaction back to our postal address or any other personally identifiable information. So I could go on and on, but I'm sure somewhere there's a grocery store, and I'm making this up, but the 80-20 rule still operates at retail the same way it operates in almost any business. And there is some 20% of the customers, more or less, who are responsible for 80% of the profit. And I'm sure there's a grocery store somewhere where those customers have been identified, maybe through a loyalty program and otherwise, and their photos are in the team room in the back of the store, and all employees are told, if Mrs. Jones comes in, be extra nice to her. So that's my guess is what some retailers do. But I personally, I think Chris's strategy is awesome.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
The thing that's interesting that I hear, and it's funny when you watch, Shark Tank, and they talk about, the customer. Kevin O'Leary is constantly asking, what customer acquisition costs to digital businesses that are in the digital marketplace, and and he's like, well, then if you just throw more money at it, then you acquire more customers. And there is a clear line. Like, that's not difficult math. If it costs $8 to get a $10 profit customer, then you just spend $8, as many $8 as you can find, and you've got more $10 customers. The place where lifetime value of a customer comes into play is when you can expand that and go into the fact that you understand what the lifetime value of that customer is. Then you can spend more money on customer acquisition, because it might be that the short-term return is $8 or $10, but the lifetime value could be exponentially more. And then pouring gasoline on the transaction, or on the marketing, to be able to have more transactions come into play is the key. The problem that I find with a lot of the businesses that I've engaged with is that that customers peel off. And so you don't get the lifetime value, you get some percentage of the lifetime value, and trying to keep those customers in the mix is where they lose their opportunity. So they spend $50 to acquire a customer that doesn't ever bring $50 in profit to the organization because they peeled off too early. And so you kind of have to make this commitment to the lifetime relationship, and the engagement, and the experience, and the customer service. And the third opportunity of that is customer win back. So when you do lose a customer and you realize they haven't been in your organization, what are you doing to bring them back into the fold? Because a lot of customers, well, we know the percentages, but the majority of customers who leave an organization isn't because they're disappointed in the relationship with the customer. It's because they don't feel that they bring value to the relationship. So we have to go through our database and re-engage customers that haven't been in our store, really in a personal way, so that we can bring them back into what's the lifetime relationship. And ultimately the benefit is the customer wins and we win, because the customer comes back into an organization where he knows they're valued, or she knows that they're valued. And we also recognize that they came back, and that they're asking for us to treat them a little bit better than maybe they thought they were being treated. And in our organization, again, we really focus on the relationship and the experience with the customer, but we miss. And so we need to figure out how to get that to come back around and be a good customer. And so having this lifetime focus on a customer, and again, lifetime is whatever it is. I'm fortunate we started 39 years ago. So when I started selling bikes, I never looked at a customer really and said, well, I might sell him and his family bikes for 40 years. I was a 16-year-old kid. What did I know? Yeah. But now I'm literally into the third generation of people. Wow. That, the kid came in when he was 16 and got his bike. He bought a bike for his kid, and now his kid is actually bringing his 5-year-old in for a training wheel bike. I'm like, and I'm only 55, but at the end of the day, it's amazing to think that long out into the relationship.
That's really great. There is I wanted to ask if you would share your favorite win-back technique. So you notice there's some kind of latency, what they call it. The customer hasn't been in the store for a while. So what do? Do you send them an email?
No. We call them up.
Call them.
Yeah. We just pick up the phone and call them. We have all their data, because again, the bike is registered. It has, we don't want to have a recall liability. So we have their name and their address and their phone number and their email and text and everything. But ultimately, we just pick up the phone and call them. Hey, it's Tom, who's my director of retail operations, or it's Greg, or it's Chris. we're just calling. We haven't seen you in a while and want to make sure what you have is working correctly. Is there something we can do to, we'll run over and pick it up if we have to, but we don't want you to be in harm's way. We want to make sure the tires are inflated and the bike's actually working correctly. Or, hey, we just got some, I noticed that, you haven't been in a while and you bought a jersey that, a while ago or a winter, a winter jacket, they don't last forever. I was curious if there's an issue. Recalls are the best relationships to bring customers back in. You have a helmet issue, or you have some, the buckle's broken on a helmet and you need to get another, buckle to that customer. You call them up, hey, just, you bought this thing, 5 years ago and there's a recall. Can you come in and let us swap it out? And just those simple touches will bring the customer back into like, wow, like they actually know who I am. I'm not just a number. I'm actually a person. So that's really our win back is as face-to-face as we could make it.
And it's presented as something of value. It's a service call, in effect. A win-back call disguised as a service call.
Right. It's everything is an experience. When I speak to the organizations, I say, we're not in the bike business. We don't sell bikes. We sell weight loss, fun, recreation, camaraderie, freedom, whatever. We're selling high fives to little kids. So when we pick up the phone and we call and say, hey, we haven't seen you in a while and want to make sure your bike is working correctly, we're not doing it to get and oh, by the way, we offer a lifetime free service on everything that we sell. So those calls to bring a bike in to have it serviced isn't a revenue opportunity for us because we're offering lifetime free service anyway. We're just engaging the customer and saying, hey, we haven't seen you and want to make sure your bike is working or that it's up to snuff and that, you can come in and drop it off and we'll take care of it. So it's not tied to a financial. Our interactions with our customers is tied to a financial return as much as it is to engage them to then decide if they want to make a financial investment with us.
Fantastic.
Just a little different focus on the relationship.
Wonderful.
Speaking of relationships, I've got a question from Todd. It's a little long, so I'm going to read it. Bear with me. To ensure clear accountability for achieving the maximum lifetime value of a particular B2B customer, does it follow that the customer should be owned by the rep who initially secured the customer, and that essentially all access to the customer should be like through that rep? In other words, that rep should have maximum control regarding the management of that customer.
Who wrote that question? That's so interesting.
It's a good question. I think so in our organization, we wouldn't want to have a single relationship because when that person's not available, then the service experience fails or diminishes. So, we have a relationship where in our business to business interaction is that multiple people engage the customers. There's the customer service people, there's the sales team, there's the logistics team, there's the guy that calls if there's a problem with shipping, and they all know and have a relationship with that with that client. And the value of that is in having it be a multi-tiered and multi-tentacled relationship is that if one of the people isn't there or that person at the organization that's a customer leaves, there's still people in the mix that know how to keep them engaged. On the B2B side of our business, the best day is when a good customer leaves their company to go work for a company that we currently don't do business with, because we're not going to lose the relationship with the existing customer, and we're going to carry that relationship with the new employee because they say, hey, I've got this great relationship with Zane's. They do a great job for us on our order fulfillment and on our incentive business. So we should give them a shot. And then all of a sudden now we have two great customers instead of one great customer. And again, my sales team is so focused on taking care of whatever is in front of them and growing the relationship that it's not like they're trying to keep it in their vest pocket and not let anybody else know about it. We're a team effort. Everything we do is tied to the team so that we can provide a great experience.
Right.
Fantastic.
Do you see that as well, or do you see more individual ownership?
So it's a function of the mostly about the size of the firm on both sides and the complexity of the selling process or buying process. Often the salespeople are are asked to move on to the next prospect and hand the relationship to a customer success person or an account manager or some other title, because you get the value of specialization. You also get that multi-touch continuity that Chris was just talking about. And you also have your hunters doing your hunting, and you have your nurturers doing your nurturing. So there's some efficiencies there. But I remember when I worked at IBM for about 3 years, and some of the large companies, I mean, talking about the 80-20 rule, IBM got probably 98% of its revenue from 2% of its customers. And
Wow.
those large enterprises, global enterprises for whom IBM ran their entire IT function, in effect, those sales executives or account executives owned the relationship to the point where they didn't have offices at IBM. They lived at the client's building and had an office there likely or nearby, and there would be teams of scores, hundreds of IBMers managing the account as a team in multiple geographies. So really there's lots of different answers to that question.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. So I just want to go back.
Ginger, one of the things about the hunters is if a hunter is engaged with a customer and the customer has, which all customers have more upside. So is the hunter engaged in looking for a new customer, or is the hunter involved in looking for a better way to serve, or a higher level of value that they can bring to the existing customer? And that's in our organizations, that's why we don't let them peel off, because our best customers, and an 80-20 rule it definitely plays, and especially in the corporate business, in a B2B business. What can we do to get more of those great customers' business? And if the hunter is out focused on something else, then you have an opportunity to lose potential upside, because you don't know what questions need to be asked to get more opportunity. You know, the folks that like to service the love employees that are engaged in making sure everybody's happy. They're not always asking, hey, is there another place where we can make a difference? And you also have to have a single entity in the organization that understands when to step back. So, you know, a great example is I started with ADP with our payroll services, and I was like fresh meat. There were 9 different sales guys from ADP calling me for 9 other services. And because they had my contact information, because I was an existing customer, I couldn't make it stop. I finally called my guy. I'm like, I'm out. ADP isn't gonna have my payroll if you don't get these people to stop calling me, because I didn't sign up to be sold to. I signed up to get a service. And so they finally got a feel for the fact that, you know, you need to temper it. And by having a single person who's responsible for that, they can get a sense of, am I too aggressive, or am I missing opportunity? But if you just open up the floodgates and let all the hunters go into your best customers, it gets kind of crazy. You know, it becomes offensive.
Yeah,
great point. Yeah, so one of the techniques a B2B company might do is training and incentives for those account managers or customer success managers to encourage and make it possible for that, change their mindsets and their skill sets to do some cross-selling or sniff out opportunity in the account that would otherwise not have even occurred to them. So, but it's not easy, because people who are in service roles may resent being asked to perform sales functions, right, Chris? I mean, it's not what they signed up for.
Well, and our organization's small, so it depends on, you know, big and small, and we only engage what we know, but everybody is responsible for ensuring that the company continues, and that, you know, if you say, I don't do that, or that's not what I signed up for, and that's what really needs to happen, you're probably not going to stay on the team for a long time, because we're really trying to be agile and recognize that if somebody sees something, they might not necessarily have to bring it across the finish line, but they certainly have to engage someone who can help bring it across the finish line. And if you're a stick your head in the sand team member, you're probably not going to be around very long. And we've had them, and they move on. It's just, no hard feelings. It's just, this doesn't fit, because we're into a lifetime experience and an engagement and making sure the customer's satisfied. And if you just want to check boxes, you're probably, again, in our organization, you're not gonna be around very long.
There's a famous concept that came out of the work of a Harvard professor named Earl Sasser. He wrote an article, a pretty well-known article in the early 80s, called The Service Profit Chain. And service and profit are sort of almost hyphenated. And he made the point, which this is just so you, Chris. He made the point that the value a firm gets, meaning the profit that a firm gets from its customers is just the end of a long chain. And the chain begins, the value it engenders, it comes from satisfaction. And the way the satisfaction is generated is by the service, meaning how your people, the attitude and abilities of your people. So companies who invest in employee training, motivation, culture, all of those tools that you, Chris, seem to do naturally, has been shown by this professor to have a direct result on improved profits. I'll send you the article.
I've actually seen it, because it's been it's been in the ethos forever. It's one of those things you got to understand in order to stay on top of it. I'm an entrepreneur. It's a cause and effect thing. I figured out early on that engaged customers made the company more successful and allowed it to grow and continue to hire more people. And so it's our culture is that of, like, we want to be there for our customers and create a great relationship. And one of the values, and my friend Len Berry says it best, good service doesn't just improve the quality of the business, it also improves the quality of life. And so the people who work in a nice environment have a good environment. So those are the reasons we do all the things we do, but it's definitely success driven. If it didn't necessarily show a return on investment, we wouldn't continue to make that investment. And as we look at the how things are moving and the relationships that customers are having with businesses that they love, whether it's Apple or it's Microsoft, and we have all these different relationships that were cast upon us. I mean, no one ever knew that they were going to sign up to have a relationship with Microsoft until the software became a subscription-based software, and now you have to have a relationship with Microsoft. And geez, I hope it works every time I log in to use it. And so as long as you understand what the relationship is that your customer needs to have with you, you can then keep them engaged and continue to collect the revenue / profit of that relationship, and they don't seek to find someone else.
So you've both talked a lot about the various values of understanding customer lifetime value. I want to just go back, Chris, one, do you feel like you've really gained a competitive advantage over competitors by how well you understand customer lifetime value?
Without a doubt. Again, these relationships I have with all these folks that are in the customer service world, as I came up in business, have these great examples. And the competitive advantage that we have is the switching costs are so high for our customers to go somewhere else. So switching costs, in the simplest term, is how difficult is it to change your bank account? You have to wait for the money to clear. You have to make sure you don't have a minus balance. Then you have to go to a new bank and fill out all the paperwork, and then you have to transfer the money. And so those are considered switching costs. They're not financial costs. They're intrinsic pain in the neck costs of having a new relationship with a new bank. Well, I deliberately set in lifetime free service on our customers so that my competitors wouldn't ever get revenue for service for my customers. So they immediately fell off. All those customers that have bikes from us haven't spent a penny with me or with my competitors, so they have no ability to collect that revenue. And so that's really where the point of difference comes in having a solid understanding of lifetime value, is you're able to build in competitive advantage so that other organizations can't infiltrate your customer base, because you've basically built this machine that keeps you out. Again, back to the example, is it blue texts or green texts? Apple's got us. Nobody wants to have a green text. You want blue text, because then it's in all of your apparatus and it's not just on your phone. But if you have green texts, everybody else knows you're not an Apple, and you've got this, you might not see the text. So there's a switching cost that's built into the relationship that no one wants to abandon, because it's just a simple relationship to keep.
Interesting. So you've both have mentioned, like I said, all the various benefits of tracking customer lifetime value. What are some of the challenges in trying to make it work, or use it to understand, to do all these things, to better understand your customers and to treat them differently, or better if you're treating them the same, etc.? Any challenges with using it?
I would say buy-in is getting your staff to, especially from the beginning. It's easy now. We've been doing it for 35 years. So somebody comes on and everybody's like, no, you got to understand, the customers have been here forever and you got to treat them well. But when you start to do lifetime value and have that become something that's in your conversation and trying to build that into the culture, it takes a fair amount of effort to get buy-in, because people don't necessarily, it's that are you or are you not? It's hard to get a customer to get yelled at. An employee to get yelled at by a customer and have the employee not respond in a way they want to, because the guy's yelling at them over an $8 item, and like, look, man, you're just busting my chops over an $8 item. And it's hard to get all the employees to buy in that, no, it's not an $8 item, it's a $12,500 relationship. And you can take it on the chin every once in a while if a customer's frustrated because they bring in $12,500. Like, it's just a different relationship. So again, it's that, I would say buy-in and discipline, because you have to do all your data, you have to collect data, you have to know the value of the customer, you have to know how to stay engaged with the customer, whether it's face-to-face or it's digitally. And digital works as long as you have a function that's acceptable by your customer and they like the way you engage them digitally, then digital is just as good as me picking up the phone and calling a customer. But you have to know that works for them and figure out what the best way to engage them is on their terms, because it's all about them coming back. So it really is their terms. If they pull in the driveway and come into my store, I win. If they drive by and go, oh, those guys are just a lot of hot air, I lose. So how do you have that become, the thing that your employees embrace?
Right. Ruth, any challenges that you see?
Yeah, I agree that I would point out again the importance of the data, and that data collection is more difficult than ever. And again, we operate as direct marketers within the bounds of society's approval. And our industry has stepped over the line frequently over the decades and gotten our hands slapped. And we've had to adjust our methods. And these days, man, with cookies going away, for example, this is yet another example of how we've annoyed our customers or our customers' customers, and we have to change our practices. So these are, I think, we have to constantly remind ourselves that we need to be responsible and not conduct business practices that we would feel embarrassed to have revealed on the front page of the New York Times.
Absolutely. Was any misconceptions about customer lifetime value that you run across?
I think I see occasionally businesses using top line revenue as the numerator when they should really be looking at margin. And sometimes margin is hard to get at if you don't have cost accounting practices available to you. Another problem is when you don't really have a direct relationship with the end buyer. Chris's suppliers, the bike companies would probably dearly love to know what's going on with Chris's customers and be able to respond to that. But Chris owns the relationship with the bike owner. And
can I have you call my suppliers? Because I have that conversation with them all the time. Oh, and by the way, I am a customer. I'm not a partner. Like, we're not partners. I'm a customer. You supply me bikes. I supply customers bikes. So why don't you treat me like a customer instead of we're partners? You don't pay my rent. So yes, I agree entirely that the vendors, the suppliers become really challenged.
Yeah.
And now there's fights with everyone's fighting with Amazon, for example. Amazon owns a whole lot of the customer relationship today, and the retailers who are selling through the Amazon channel are furious, and rightly so, that Amazon is actually unwilling to report certain key data elements about those transactions. And of course, Amazon has the power in the relationship, so it's an ongoing struggle. Chris, What are you doing on Amazon? Just curious.
We're actually not doing anything on Amazon. We've the margins of the cost of the relationship is just too high.
Keep it that way.
It's kind of like the relationship back years ago with Walmart, in that they became so important to so many brands that they could dictate what pricing and terms and all that stuff was going to be. And Amazon's kind of in the same situation now. They just announced the day before yesterday that they're going to increase their fees to their marketplace resellers by another 2 or 3%. It's almost 30% now of what the revenue that's generated Amazon keeps. And again, Amazon built it. They had the vision. They had the long-term vision to build this bookstore into this huge everything business. And so they deserve a return because they made the investment. But it is a difficult one, and you have to know when you enter a relationship with them that you're not going to have ultimate control over the relationship with your customers and all the other things, because they're really the catalyst to all of that. So it's a little bit challenging. The other thing with lifetime value is, and I think you could talk about it. It can be a conversation in the manager's meeting or even at the board level, but you can't be a little pregnant when you engage lifetime value in your business. You're either in or you're not in. Like it's not something you get to change. It's not like, if that becomes the thing, and it's a big decision, but if that becomes the thing, all the things you do, all your marketing, all your customer messaging, all your promotion, all your interactions with your customers, it all has to be tied to the consistency of recognizing lifetime value. And it's not if it goes from being a transactional relationship to a lifetime value relationship, and the transactional marketing is very different than a lifetime relationship. And you have to take initial hits, because you can run an ad and get sales. But if you're trying to build a relationship with a customer over a long period of time, those short hits don't necessarily build a relationship or build value. So you kind of have to decide, what are you going to be?
Right. So I want to jump over. We've got a bunch of questions from the gang joining us this evening. So Ken has an interesting one. How many years out do you use in lifetime value calculations? He said he once did a formula based on 90% of revenue coming in within 5 years. So Chris, you said you have a pretty long lifetime value.
Yeah, we're 80. We're cradle-to-grave. We look at what So again, it's probably unrealistic, but again, it's part of our culture building relationship. So I would say that realistically, it's probably a 25-year relationship that we're going to have with the customer at a pretty high level. Because when they're little, they don't make their buying decision. The parents do. And so it's really once they get out of college and they start to earn money that they become a real viable financial customer for us. Prior to that, we're just building a relationship with them so that when it's time for them to spend their own money, they come to us. So it's not like I add them into the equation initially just because the parents made the decision. But it's really from like 25 to 60 that a customer, or 25 to 50, that a customer is going to spend the majority of their revenue in our organization. but again, our model doesn't include referrals. So we use this number of 12.5, 60, 52.50 in profit for that customer without them being the guy at the end of the driveway that his neighbors say, hey, where should I get my bike fixed? Or where should I get a bike? Or Joey needs a bike, where should I go? And so our lifetime value of our customers is probably exponentially higher because of all the referrals that we get. Also, Steve at Danny's is a really great guy. Good shout out to the fact that his, in the Q&A that he's done a great job. He really is a rock star. When my book came out, he was actually in my office about 6 weeks after the book came out, and we've worked together for years on how to build a culture that's based around lifetime value. And so obviously some of the folks that are in New York recognize that somebody doing something right, and Steve is definitely doing something right at Danny's in Scarsdale.
Yeah. Ruth, how about in some of the companies that you've worked with, what kind of calculations have you seen?
Well, it's really a function of the expected length of engagement. And a classic direct marketing company will predict the number of years or months or number of transactions over the life based on similar buying behavior in comparable prior customer relationships. So, the point, well, part of the point of using these tools is to optimize the ROI on the customer relationship. So if you can predict at the point of acquisition that this customer will stay X number of years and spend Y amount of, or contribute Y amount of margin, then you can determine whether you can, like Chris said, pay $8 to keep bringing guys like that in. So it's really a tool based on estimates at the time of acquisition, and then later you might want to consider how much you can invest in retention efforts, like
right.
Like win back, like rewards, like promotions, whatever, to try to keep them coming back again and referring their friends, right, Chris? So it's stimulating.
You want to be that person. Well, we always say we want to be our best guess what happened to me story at a cocktail party.
Neat.
Whether it's,
I love that.
Every time one of my frontline staff walks around the parent and high fives a little kid, the parents just glow, and it's so engaging and fun.
Yeah.
That's the kind of relationship that you have. It's just one of those things that happens.
Can I ask, do you also serve coffee or anything in your store?
We serve coffee. We've had a coffee bar. We have Spunkmeyer cookies available. We have Gatorade and Snapple available. We have a coffee bar, a 14-foot mahogany coffee bar that people congregate at, and it's all complimentary. It's all part of just the experience. And it's funny because you talk about lifetime value and what do we do to engage our customers? Well, the smell of our store is a really unique, pungent thing. The tires, the coffee, the grease. When you walk in, people come in and oh, it smells so good in here. And we actually know that. So we do things to engage them at that level. Like that there's always, even if there's nobody drinking coffee, there's always a fresh pot of coffee brewing because it helps create that visceral sense of being in the bike shop. And I've looked into trying to find ink that smells like rubber that we could give to our customers with our logo on them. So when they write, they could smell the rubber. Like we're pretty fanatical about the fact that we're not doing it by accident. It's very deliberate, the things that we do to try to keep the passion for our brand in the mind of our customer.
I was going to say, Chris, that you could do a Zane's cologne, but instead, there's candles are very trendy right now, but there's a line of candles that says smells like, and it's fun things like it smells like a hangover from brunch, smells like whatever. You could do smells like Zane Cycles handle?
Again, someday. We're not that far away from that, but I would love to have, what do your candles smell like? Well, it smells like coffee, rubber, grease. Really? Like, oh no, it's really, and again, anybody who's been in every bike shop smells the same way, unless they don't have coffee, but pretty much bike shops now offer coffee as part of it because it keeps the employees in the building because they run out for coffee 7 times a day. But if we have our own coffee in our facility, they don't leave. So it kind of is a double benefit to our organization to have, a really nice, we do espresso and cappuccino, and it's a pretty high-end relationship that we have. My employees benefit from as well. And ultimately the organization benefits because my employees don't leave the building. So right. They're there to service the customers. Imagine that.
Nice. So we have a question from Josh. Chris, you mentioned that calling is the most intimate touch point to re-engage your customers. But in an increasingly digital ecosystem, is there another platform or strategy that you use or recommend that a small business could use?
We don't do it a lot, but we certainly text our customers because they've given us permission to text them because we're going to text them that their bike is the repair is done and it's just a convenience thing. So we're not bombarding them with 17 texts a week. But when a customer is outside of our falling off as a win back and we need to engage them, if the phone call doesn't get a return call or we can't get them, we'll send a text. But all the things we do are again, with the intent that we're trying to provide something, we're not just asking for something. So I think that's the thing that, regardless of whether you're trying to have all digital customers, what's the way that you can provide them something that's valuable and not just blast them with marketing and come spend your money with us messages. I remember when I launched the book, folks I had talked about Twitter because we used Twitter at the time to help promote sales. And they said, well, you got to keep in mind, it's a third. A third of the time you can talk about what you're trying to get them to do. A third of the time you can talk about just you and what it is that you're all about. But a third of the time has to be something that'll benefit them independent of your brand, of your getting something in response for them. So you have to kind of look at that a third model as well. A third of the time I'm trying to collect revenue. A third of the time I'm just trying to have people love Zanes. And a third of the time I'm trying to promote cycling and fun and recreation and sponsor, triathlons or fundraising rides or going to schools and teaching little kids how to ride bikes. Those are not revenue driven interactions. Those are good for the general public. And that's an important part of the relationship. So if your only relationship is digital, how do you have a third of the time be beneficial to your customer independent of, revenue? Right. Because the revenue will come. You become, if you're top of mind, if you're the people they think of for the service you provide, unless you punch them in the face, you're going to catch revenue from that relationship. I'm being facetious.
So a little bit more general question. So there's been a tremendous growth in subscription box product marketing. Do you find these companies understand the concept of customer lifetime value and how to treat all costs associated with acquisition? Any thoughts on that, Ruth?
Yeah, I hope they do, because any direct-to-consumer business, if it's not operating that way, they're going to be in big trouble, because one of the problems with DTC is that you have to pay up front for the acquisition, and you only earn back the lifetime value over a period of time. So you have to have a ton of working capital. And this is why the retail model is so appealing, because the channel is already set up. Those relationships are already owned by the retailer. And if you can get your product on the shelf, then the cost of selling the cost of building that direct relationship can basically be offloaded to the retailer. So anyway, but I'll stop there. I certainly hope they're thinking carefully about such matters.
Yeah. How about this? In its simplest terms, if they're not going to be around very long, because that's all they are. they're, and especially in a subscription relationship, you know, you have to have done the math and done the exercise to figure out how that relationship turns into a profitable relationship, and what do you have to do that. And if you're just shooting from the hip and going, we'll set up a subscription, but we don't really know what it costs to do our business, well, they won't be around very long. So that's it's pretty simple.
Right.
I think that the boxes are a bit of a fad right now. At the same time, some of the DTC startups have really changed the business, the industry. Dollar Shave Club and Harry's, for example, put the fear of God in Gillette. You know, and there's a real revolution at retail and in consumer packaged goods that's being driven by the success of some of these interesting subscription DTC businesses.
Yeah.
So take for instance, is it Harry's? Harry's got bought by Procter & Gamble. And so is Procter & Gamble taking the understanding that Harry's has, because they obviously have an understanding because they're successful and they've done a great job in keeping customers engaged and staying loyal to their brand. Are they rolling that out into their mature brands? And you know, are they able to capitalize on all that knowledge that Harry's brings to the relationship? I would hope that we see, you know, changes in the way that some of the other products get recognized in the marketplace, because Procter picked up on the fact that, hey, this is a cool way to keep people engaged for a long time, instead of a sale on the shelf at the grocery store, you know, or it doesn't sell at all.
Right.
A lot more profitable relationship opportunity there.
Absolutely. Well, we have a handful of other questions, but unfortunately we have run out of time. So, Chris, Ruth, thank you so much. What a great conversation. So much good information. And thanks everyone for attending. I just want to remind everyone that the next midweek recharge will be in a couple of weeks. We'll have the information on the website soon. But in the meantime, speaking of cookies that Ruth mentioned earlier, we have our Cookies and Cocktails event on Wednesday, October 21st. So not only will we be talking about the impending demise of the cookie and what we should all be doing, we will BYO our own cookies and cocktails. And so, you know, bring the Malamars and Prosecco is what I'm saying. Right. So I look forward to seeing you all there. And thanks so much again for joining us today, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks for having us.
Including us, Ginger. A lot of fun.